No one. I'm a man. No one cares.
Most men live really tough lives of often quiet desperation and trickiness, but not all. I think it was great that there was a movement on TikTok and YouTube to show women who don't seem to know that being a man is bad. That society doesn't care. That society is kind of centric. That men are the ones who are systematically oppressed and have been for a million years. Actually, for 500 million years, if you want to be strict, since we lost the great mitochondrial wars of 500 million BC. But for some men, if you're charming, if you're lucky, maybe if you're young, there is still some people who, we do have someone to call. And I think I was one of those lucky men for most of my life so far. But also, as I continue to age, I see that this is becoming less and less the case. Society is much more tolerant of a man, regardless of his productivity, when he's younger, and then gets less and less tolerant over, about men over time, because I guess from society's perspective, especially if you're trying to use men, like a lot of people are now, you're better off like making men believe that they only have value if they are producing for someone else, if they are providing resources to a woman or a child or a corporation or something like that. And I think this is particularly ingrained in the American mentality. I've been in many countries, in like 25 countries, and I speak 5 languages, so I know a few cultures somewhat, in a different way than most people do. I'm also an anthropologist, and we do study a lot of cultures and how different people behave in different ways. And I think it would be very valuable for people in Western societies and the English-speaking internet intelligentsia, us, the elites, to change that perspective a little bit and to value men more intrinsically for themselves. The first person who showed up in the last few years who had a really, really positive message for men and encouraged men who felt like no one else was encouraging them was Jordan Peterson. And in the process, he became the most famous academic in recent history, like since, I don't know, Einstein? Like, he's more famous than Oppenheimer ever was, I think. Anyway, so yeah, basically anyone who has the capability and the willingness to encourage and help men should help men, and people who are willing to call out the absurdity of society. The reason why a lot of men, even though they know all this, they don't talk about it, is because women will occasionally punish you, especially younger women, women who have been brainwashed by things like feminism. They will punish you for stating the truth, that society is antagonizing towards man. It doesn't care about men, that men are disposable, that men are the lesser sex, that men are less powerful, and so on. Um, and they will punish you by removing themselves from your mating pool. And of course, that punishment is extremely stark and harsh, and therefore it works. And because men are most attracted to women who are very young, then what happens is that all men, even whether they're wise and older and they're like whatever 50, 40, or they're young, like we're all vying for the attention and the interest and the sex of the same women. And those women are young, and because they're young, they're naive and they don't know better, so they're easy to brainwash. So we have like this cycle where, even though the male side of the equation has the awareness that those things are happening and that men are being constantly punished and put into, loneliness and depressive states and suicidal modalities and so on, we can't talk about it, because when we talk about it, women punish us by attacking us, by attacking reputation, by removing themselves from our mating pool, and by calling, they might call someone a loser. And of course, like a male that it has a little bit more insecurity, that's still kind of like fighting for his place in the hierarchy of being, he will also like join in, right? So you have, just like you have that phenomenon where the male feminists, they imitate the octopus that kind of pretends to be a female so that he can mate with the females. Loser man and the decrepit man who are trying to vie for a higher place in the hierarchy than they otherwise would have, they will join in these chantings by feminist women who, it's not their fault. Like, they were brainwashed, they're young, they haven't had the time to acquire wisdom and understand, the nature of reality and all these other things. And there's a bunch of people who are like praising them, and I've heard that the Barbie movie does that, and a bunch of people just telling them that, like, you're great for doing this, and you're actually like in the right side of history, and everything is going to be fine as long as women get power. I mean, just check in history what happens when women get power in pretty much any domain. It's almost never a good ordeal. Of course, some women have high testosterone, some women have high intelligence, high capacity for leadership, and that small fraction of women, I mean, thank God that we allow them to participate in society and provide all the value that they can provide. But for the vast majority of women, I mean, you just need eyes and ears and a little bit of a capacity for thinking to realize that they are not playing the game in the same league as men are. And then the other thing is that most men are invisible to women, and I don't just mean that from the OkCupid trend, like statistics and whatever. Women basically don't see most men from a mating perspective because they're trying to select for the best genes. The world got globalized technologically, so they confuse the top 1% of men in a bunch of characteristics that compose attractiveness, which involves, biological attractiveness. It involves capability to socialize, emotional intelligence, ability to accrue resources, ability to share and understand, capacity to lead, and so on and so forth, right? But yeah, women only see like the top 1%, 2% now. And they think that they are seeing like 60%, 70%. Like, if you ask them, they confuse the 1%, 2% with the 60, 70%. So the other men end up being invisible. And yeah, it's really complicated. And we don't really, like, there isn't really a solution and a way out of this, because for the few men who have managed to ascend into that 2%, like, we end up getting all the advantages, right? We get all the women, we get the status, the power, the affordances, the societal recognition. Yeah. So for the majority of men, it's horrible until you make it in that category. Most men never do, but the ones that do have a reason to build a wall around it and to protect it, and to prevent other men from coming in. And then women have reasons to shame and attack the men who didn't make it in, because from their perspective, that's just the easiest way to get the best genes into your children, B, maximize the amount of resources you get without necessarily deserving them. And it's just intrasexual competition and intersexual competition, and they're trying to get their genes out there. And yeah, it's a horrible system, and it causes men to suffer in extraordinary ways that are very hard to kind of come around. One piece of hope, beside things like Jordan Peterson for lower IQ, or our selected man, Andrew Tate, might be useful. But besides these kind of gurus that help man, and if you're on the left, maybe Destiny, then what we'll have now is AIs, and AIs don't have our evolutionary qualms and problems. So AIs will be able to help man and to care about man in the same way as they care about women, including the men who are invisible to women, and including the men who are in the top are fancying themselves and wringing themselves out of. So there's some hope in AI for a while, until AI is going to kill us all.